Preston, I don't have any sort of biographical sketch on you, so why don't you tell everybody who you are?
I'm essentially an electrical engineer, graduated from University of Tampa, attended Polytechnic Institute of New York. I've worked in the military-industrial establishment for a number of years, worked on many secret projects, including the Montauk Project.
Okay, are you retired now?
I consider myself semi-retired. I've been forced to be semi-retired.
Okay.
I have my own business now.
You have your own business, all right.
Yeah.
You want to tell us what kind of business?
We do electronics manufacturing, small manufacturing, R&D work, testing. We do rebuilding of electronic equipment for the small industries on Long Island here.
Very good. All right, Preston, what in the world is the Montauk Project still going on?
Yes, it is.
It is?
Mm-hmm.
When did it begin, and what can you tell us about it?
Well, as far as we know, it traces back to about 1947 when they decided to restart the Philadelphia experiment to find out what actually went wrong and why the people on the boat were not able to take the field. As we've all heard before, the Philadelphia experiment is where they attempted to make a Navy ship, radar invisible. They got total invisibility and the thing disappeared. And they got sucked into a hole in hyperspace between 1943 and 1983. Excuse me. So what actually happened is they did a lot of R&D work. The project split into two. The engineering went to Los Alamos, we believe, and that's where they developed the stealth technology that's on the third level of the stealth aircraft these days. The other part of the project, which was the human factors project, went to Brookhaven National Laboratories, which was the largest human factors research in the United States. This is now about 1950, we believe. It joined what was known as the Phoenix Project, which was a very large, all-encompassing research project involving research into the human mind, the mind of man. I cannot go into what that's all about because I did sign security on that.
They made you sign a paper.
Mm-hmm. Well, when you get employment, anything that they have you sign, there would be illegal and jail time to talk about. You'd be convicted of espionage.
That's right.
See, on the Montauk Project, they used different methods of security, which we can get into a little later, where I never signed for it.
So there will be some of it that you can talk about.
Yeah, the Montauk Project I can talk of, because that I never signed for. In fact, officially, I never existed on that project.
Oh. Well, all right. Let's back up a little bit. I'm sure that you've heard Al Bielek's description of the Philadelphia experiment.
Yes, I have many times.
Do you agree with or quarrel with it, or do you think it's accurate, or do you know of any inaccuracies or anything you'd like to correct about what he said about it?
Well, essentially, what he's saying is very controversial. I believe there are many different tests of radar invisibility, total invisibility, that the government research did attempt in World War II, and he's reporting on one test. If you read the popular Bill Moore book, Bill Moore compiled all sorts of information which was on a number of different kinds of tests, different kinds of procedures used. This is why the book is somewhat confusing. Al is speaking essentially from personal experience, excuse me, in talking with a lot of other people that he's come across, just as I've come across people. The Philadelphia experiment did happen. It was definitely a high-energy physics project. There is other information coming to surface saying that Nikola Tesla had a input to it in the beginning.
Correct.
And, Dr. John Eric von Neumann definitely did work on it. He himself told me that. And I think Al's idea of what happened on the boat, excuse me, it was pretty much correct. because also I've had the same idea from other witnesses, like Duncan Cameron, who was also on the boat with Al.
All right,
I really
so
don't have any quarrels with Al.
So then you think the story is essentially correct?
It's essentially correct. I think he may have missed some items and some of the points.
One thing that I've found, as I've interviewed a lot of people who talk about time travel, talk about alien spacecraft and the way space might be warped and the way it might be jumped across, in fact, and the technologies that they're talking about are strikingly similar to the one that Al Bielek told us about.
Well, again, we're discussing here what happens when you pulse a magnetic field to extremely strong levels. It's well known in the quantum physics world that if you pulse a magnetic field beyond, I believe it's 1,000 Tesla field strength, it is highly possible to bend space and time. Now, if you can control this, it is theoretically possible to gain control of space and the time continuum, which would lead to the ideas that all this stuff you hear coming out of the UFO legends has some scientific basis behind it. Although a lot of the physicists will not accept the idea that there are parallel multiple realities. But your quantum physics is beginning to accept that idea at this point, and a lot of them always have.
What was the mission of the Montauk Project? What was what were they trying to accomplish? What was the central theme?
Well, after the stealth technology was developed, it was suggested that this is the first time we have definite evidence that the mind of man is sensitive to electromagnetic fields. Let's research this further and develop population control. We can weaponize this thing as to make the enemy surrender. And, I'm sure the possibilities are mind-boggling at this point. Congress said, no, we don't want this. This is mind control. This is too politically active. They were setting up to research literally mind control technologies. They went to the military and said, would you be interested in this kind of a weapon? Of course, this is every tactician's dream. So the military said, yes, we are, and they gave them the old Montauk Air Force Station, which is only about 40 miles away from Brookhaven Labs, that they can do this stuff in secrecy and not be under the watchful eye of the congressional committees.
Well, when you say mind control, what exactly were they able to do to a person?
Well, they were able to essentially inject a thought into a person's mind, make him believe it's his own thought, and control what you're thinking, and therefore have some effect on what you're doing. They could literally read out what you're thinking. They can modify your thought patterns.
Oh. What?
And this was done at a distance using radio waves.
At a distance using radio waves?
That's what this whole thing was about. Remember, it started by studying the effects of electromagnetics on human beings in the stealth technology. And it evolved into this device that could literally reach into a person's mind.
At a distance?
At a distance.
And
up to about thousands of miles. We're not sure exactly how far it was.
All right. You said you can't talk about the technical aspects of whatever allowed, the biologically friendly fields to be applied. But can you talk about the technology that allows mind control, or is that one and the same?
Yes, because I did not sign for that. They used mind control to make anyone that worked on the project forget what they did.
Well, all right. What technology is behind that? I know radio waves, but radio waves generally are totally harmless and without effect to biological entities. They're all around us.
Well, this, as you've probably been reaching, this is coming up to a lot of debate at this point, exactly how harmless are these electromagnetic waves.
That's true.
Most of our waves that we do deal with in our environment are what we call continuous waves, CW, like coming out of your radio transmitter.
Right.
Human beings are sensitive to pulsed waves, fast on and off. semi-random fractal-based type modulations in pulse form. They use pulse frequency and pulse amplitude. It's a very, very specialized form of modulation resembling some very modern chirp-type radar signals.
All right, so it's a true pulse then. It's not just a pulse modulation.
It's a true pulse. It's a frequency-hopping pulse.
Frequency hopping?
Yes, it goes from frequency to frequency to frequency. If you tune it in on a radio receiver, it just sounds like a crack at a particular frequency. Then it goes to another frequency, you got another crack, and it hops around from frequency to frequency. Montauk had about 20 different frequencies they hop between 420 and 460 megahertz.
420 and 460 again. That's interesting. Yeah. The Russians are using something or another that we call the woodpecker.
Well, that's down at HF.
That's HF, is correct.
Right.
And so it's
and
not.
That's the same, similar type of modulation scheme.
Is it?
Again, it's a pulse with a chirp inside the pulse.
Oh.
I've looked at the Russian woodpecker. In fact, we have what we call over-the-horizon radar here, which looks almost identical but much more sophisticated. And when that first appeared on the air, I called the FCC and asked them what it was, and they said it was the American version. It was the American over-the-horizon radar. And I said, oh, you mean like the Russian woodpecker? And he said, yeah, it's our version of the woodpecker.
I see. And so then you're saying that with the right kind of pulse in the right frequency range...
Not the frequency range, how you hop from frequency to frequency. See, remember, you're building essentially a hologram, a holographic type information packet out of delta frequency information and delta amplitude information and delta phase. Of course, phase and frequency is the same. Remember, you're dealing here with very fast deltas. You have to integrate this into essentially a random ordered white noise pattern built very much on fractals.
All right. Let's assume then that all of this, which is going to begin to get above some of their heads and perhaps mine as well, all of this would affect a biological entity.
It's a very unique type of radio signal.
The next question is, how would you make it specific to any particular biological entity, particularly at a distance?
That is very interesting itself. See, at the Montauk Project, we use what we call a witness, or a signature. A signature is a group of frequencies, an electromagnetic frequency transform, which represents a particular human being, like a set of fingerprints. You will perceive a holographic thought with the signature, transmit the thought, and then, follow it with the signature. That signature would identify it as a person's particular thought. All you would have to do is identify the person's signature, and as the signal is being generated, it would be transmitted with that signature. Montauk essentially was what we like to call a mind amplifier.
So, yes, okay, I'm beginning to get it. So an individual then is required as part of in effect, the transmitted portion.
Yeah, the overall signal that was being transmitted was generated by a human being at Montauk.
Uh-huh.
They had a group of sensors that picked up his holographic thought pattern, processed it through a very large computer system, and then put it into a modified radar transmitter. And that's where I came into the picture. I was the one that was in charge of modifying the radar transmitter.
Oh, that's incredible. Oh, I see. All right, so that's how you got into this.
Yeah,
you were
they essentially built a mind amplifier.
Yeah, I understand, a mind amplifier.
And that led to all sorts of things, including mind control, precipitation of objects. There was all sorts of things that were done from this.
Well, let's say...
They were able to create an object out of the background ether. Because if a person sitting at the input of this could visualize that object in their artificial reality or virtual reality, this equipment had the capability of making it real. We're talking probably at least 100 million watts continuous, not pulse, power that they had out there. The thing was modified to what's known as beam use, which had 100 megawatt continuous power.
Did it actually create an object, or did it create the vision of an object?
It could do either one, depending upon the fidelity of the transform being reproduced through the equipment. Like, you could picture if your signal coming out of your transmitter was complete enough, it would be theoretically possible to recreate you at the other end. The reason you can't is, one, the receiver doesn't have enough power, then the information channel from the transmitter to the receiver is nowhere near high enough fidelity in the other dimensions and realities required to do it. This is what we tried to do at Montauk, was bring up this fidelity factor of broadcast.
What could you get an individual to do? You say you could put an idea in an individual's mind. How much power of suggestion could you accomplish?
Okay, I really don't know, because that's the logistics of the project. And remember, the information was very compartmentalized. Now, legends, this is reports from people who I've spoken to, told me that they can get a person to do almost anything they want. This is the way it was put. That almost the sky was the limit.
Preston, is time travel possible?
Well, the thing you have to keep in mind is, if you go into pure metaphysics, the non-physical mind is a ripple or a transform or a form on the space-time continuum. If you're going to get your way into the non-physical mind, you got to generate a time wave, which is like a warping or a repetitive bending of the time function. Now, if you could get into this, you have the remnants of a time machine. Now, I know when things were being created out of real time, what I mean is when the concentration would be at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and the object would appear early or after that time, they got very excited, shut the project down for a couple of months, and sent us all back to school to learn about time. I know they were interested in time manipulation, but of course, who wouldn't be?
Yes.
Now, being that we're compartmentalized, I have no personal knowledge of how successful the time portal per se was. Again, people who had worked with the time portal tell us that it was stable and that it was usable.
Meaning you could travel in time,
yeah.
Meaning physically travel to another time.
Okay, now, the newer quantum theories, even those theories appearing in Scientific American, are saying that there are multiple realities where time is different, and because of the multiple realities, all time does coexist. And it's possible to move from point A to point B in time. And they're saying either it's possible to go into the future, which has a lot to say about, is the future predestined or isn't it?
Exactly.
If you can travel into the future, to me, it means that we're already predestined as to what's going to happen. I believe if you make a time loop from point A to point B, you just predestined between point A and point B.
All right. Preston Nichols is my guest. He was involved in the Montauk Project. This is a fax that came, actually it's not, it came to me on America Online, on a computer service, internet, and it was Greg in San Diego. Your guest tonight has remarked that a particular technology had to be reduced to accommodate humans. Could he elaborate on that statement without violating the secrecy agreement with the government? In other words, is there anything at all that you can tell us about the adaptation of the technology to be biologically friendly?
Well, let's say first that there are 3 levels of stealth. The first 2 we hear about quite often, which is the radar cross-section, which is how much radar signal does the thing reflect. The second level is absorbing the radar signal. Now, if you've seen a picture or seen a stealth bomber or stealth fighter, you'll know darn well it's a huge pancake, and it's not. It gives a lot of radar cross-section.
Yes.
So they didn't do a good job there. And I have worked with the absorbing coatings in order to try to cut down reflections inside of component enclosures, and that stuff doesn't work all that well.
Composite materials.
Yeah, so what this is saying is there's got to be a third level. The third level is electromagnetic bottle. Now, how they made the thing user-friendly in a nutshell, this is alluded to in some of the aircraft publications, the electromagnetic bottle. They found out that when they cut off a human being from the natural background clocks, the Schumann resonance and all this sort of thing, he had a tendency to become disoriented. Now,
well, no, I don't know what you mean. What do you mean when you cut him off from normal human clocks?
Well, the Earth has a clock. It's commonly called the Schumann resonance, discovered by W.O. Schumann, which every time lightning strikes in the cavity between the upper atmosphere, the ionosphere, and the Earth, this cavity rings. The frequency is around 8 hertz. It moves between 7 hertz and 9 hertz, typically, depending upon the time of day.
That's very low.
Yeah, very, very low. And this is sort of what clocks our biological functions. Also, this changing of this frequency from night to day is what causes us to wake up, go to sleep. It causes a lymphatic flush of the system.
Mm-hmm.
It also has a lot to do with the alpha, beta, gamma rhythms in the brain. Now, the other problem, the original technology created a solid field. They had to somehow focus this field into a shell so that the people were not getting irradiated by this large field. I'm not talking atomic radiation, but essentially electromagnetic radiation. There is a difference.
Yes.
But either one can be just as dangerous, especially when you're using pulse magnetic fields like they were using to bend space-time to the point where they're just outside of our continuum, so the thing was somewhat invisible, either radar or fully invisible.
So you could get different levels of stealth depending on how...
Yes, you can.
Huh.
They go from either 0 being in our reality or 90 degrees out being in the imaginary reality. At that point, the object is gone.
What are they doing at Montauk now?
Well, present day, it is a state park. It's listed on all the maps as Department of Parks property.
Huh.
The state park is annexed on to the Montauk Point State Park. It's known as the Camp Hero Park. Only thing is, the park is closed to the public.
Oh.
They got a big fence up around it. They got security on the base. They got an electric gate. And there's 2 power lines going into the park, each capable of multi-megawatts. Now, what's a state park doing with multi-megawatts?
Good question.
Now, we've also known that there's all sorts of activity. They have what we believe to be a fake program for reclaiming the site and detoxing the site. They talk of removing asbestos.
Asbestos?
Around the facility, there's these elevated pipes that they use to carry hot water, which have asbestos jackets. Even to this day, they haven't taken that off, and that's the easiest thing to get off. And probably some of the most dangerous is as the wind blows, that asbestos is powdering and being blown all over the place. So if they were really removing asbestos, that would have been one of the first things they would have gotten to.
Well, what kind of buildings are there?
They're demolishing a lot of the old derelict base building. We believe the active area is underground. We've had reports, and I know I've been in the underground, but we've had reports that there's now an 8-level underground, which is huge. Goes out for miles. Well, some of this could be exaggeration.
Is there anything...
We know that there's a particle accelerator out at Montauk as well.
Uh-huh. Is there anything else at Montauk that would justify that kind of a power to it on the ground, above ground? In other words...
It's a bunch of derelict buildings. One building is being used as essentially... The state park police cop lives there. Now, what the hell is he going to use with that kind of power? And secondly, there's a State of New York Parts Commission maintenance garage, motor pool maintenance garage. They have this one garage with these 3 huge transformers. I've heard anywhere from 1.5 megawatts to 10 megawatts going in. Now, even if they put in a megawatt of power, there'd be enough heat created to burn that building down. So, what are they doing with this power going in that building? I say it's going underground.
Well, wouldn't it be...
Now, also...
Well, wait a minute. Wouldn't it be possible, Preston, to literally follow the power lines and find out if and where they go underground?
Well, the one power line goes underground at the place where the maintenance garage is.
Oh.
The second power line goes right to the white building where the cop lives.
Oh.
And we believe it goes underground from those buildings. Now, I was also going to mention, is there are some cement buildings on top of what we call Radar Hill, where the radar tower is, the computer center is, which is physically part of the underground. And if you put your ears up against the cement walls, you'll hear like machinery running. There are pipes that stick up out of the ground, and I've dropped a microphone down, and you'll hear the whine of a turbine and the grinding of some sort of fan. Now, for a derelict station, what is the machinery that we hear running?
What do you think?
I'm not the only one that hears this. A lot of people have reported this.
I understand. What do you think they are doing there?
Some sort of something going into the electromagnetics of the planet itself. It's been suggested that the planet is tilting, and that's what they're trying, tilting on the axis, and that's what they're trying to prevent. Who knows? What they're doing is up to a lot of speculation and conjecture. All I can tell you is if you go out there at the right time, you'll pick up a very slow pulse transmission between 420 and 460 megahertz again.
Oh.
It's still out there. I got recordings of it. And also you'll pick up a very complex data transmission at 173 megahertz, which is in the guard band for Channel 7. That's why they can't watch Channel 7. If you DF these transmissions, it goes right to the old base.
Well, isn't that something?
Now, the 173 megahertz transmission, if it was done by any civilian, the FCC would come and shut them down.
In a New York second. That's true. Do you think that that is some sort of remote control, perhaps, or?
It is some sort of a data link. What the purpose is, I really don't know, because I have no way of decoding it.
Uh-huh.
Because I recorded it, wideband recording, video recordings, and handed it to different people, and they tried all the known codes on it, and it doesn't decode. So it's some sort of government secret code, most likely.
Is there mind control going on now?
There are all sorts of transmissions going on right now, which are definitely psychoactive. Whether they're on purpose or accidental, I really don't know. And they seem to have effect on a subliminal level on our consciousness.
Tell me, you were saying, in effect, that what they were doing was amplifying the human mind.
Yes.
Can that be done with any human being, or are there some humans that lend themselves more toward that?
Okay, theoretically it can be done with any human being, but you want a person who is trained that when he concentrates, his whole fiber, his whole being concentrates on the one thing. That's a specially trained person. Theoretically, any one of us could be trained to do it if we went through the training and we had the capabilities and the qualities, whatever that is.
All right.
Duncan Cameron is a very unique individual, being able to, he can only concentrate on one thing at a time. He can't concentrate on multiple tasks.
Yes.
He's so trained to go one thing at a time. See, the human being has to create a virtual reality in his mind, and then the equipment picks out that emanations of that reality. So, of course, the more complete that reality is, the more complete the transform or the metaphysical thought form will be.
And so you're saying an individual using this process with that equipment could create anything from a material object to a being or an entity or a monster?
Well, we know that they could create objects. When they went to try to create living beings, they had trouble creating living beings because now you need a much higher degree of information fidelity.
I'm sure you do.
Yes.
Any living creature
is much more complex with much more detail.
Exactly.
It's like taking a TV set and trying to put a 1,000-line picture on it. You just can't do it.
How far have they come in the fidelity area?
I don't know. Since '83, I have no knowledge.
What part did Montauk play, or what part do you know that it played in the Philadelphia experiment? As I recall, Al Bielek said...
Well, Montauk is the place where the two sailors came to.
Exactly.
We're finding that there's quite a few sailors that came from the Eldridge to Montauk and did different things. And the Montauk Project was the other end of the time loop between 43 and 83. They used this totally fixed time loop in between 2 points, actually 3 points, 63 as well. They use this time loop as like a master loop to anchor open-ended loops. That means there's equipment only on one end. Wherever somebody like Duncan Cameron could picture the time vortex going, if the fidelity was good enough, it would go there. But you'd have to have an anchor to hold it all stable, and that's what they use 43, 63, 83 for.
What made Montauk the other end of it? In other words, what focused on Montauk as the other end, or how did that...
Well, in metaphysics, we have what we call a witness. What this is, you take a photograph of a person. That photograph carries their signature, aura, whatever you want to call it. That's a witness. We made sure that we had a witness from Montauk to the Eldridge by having some of the equipment on the Eldridge, physically part of the Montauk system. We had people present that were on both projects, and then they used the Earth biorhythm cycle as the final witness effect, and guaranteed a lockup of the two projects through space and time. And there's rumors that this may have even ripped open hyperspace enough to allow all the UFOs that have come in recently since 47.
Wow.
But it has made a major rift in space-time between 43 and 83, no question. What's going to come in through that, I don't know.
Another person who sent me a fax wanted to know if any of this technology is alien technology.
Some of it is rumored to be alien technology. I do believe that this is testing alien concepts, either gathered from down UFOs or from the legendary alien treaty with the U.S. government, trading people for technology.
Do you believe that that is true?
I've seen nothing to say yes, and I've seen nothing that says no.
That's careful. That's a careful
Well, first of all, I'm not going to tell you something I know is false. I don't know.
That's good. I'm glad.
All I'll tell you is I don't know.
All right.
I'll tell you what I do know about it.
All right. Again, let's go into the basic technology that's allowing all of this, and in some detail. In other words, if I wanted to set up something that would bend space and time, or that I could begin to focus waves to affect biological entities, what kind of technology would I use? How would I put it together?
Well, if you did it the way the government did it, their benchmark was, let's kill flies with a sledgehammer. Lots and lots of power. They had a final amplifier in their transmitter which had an input of at least 200 million watts of power. Wasted half of that in heat. Heated the Atlantic Ocean with it. And put out 100 million watts. That means to do anything, you would have to build maybe 1/100th of that. It means you'd have to build a megawatt transmitter and then pulse the thing. Frequency hop it and pulse it. Then you would have to somehow correlate this to represent a fractal-based frequency-time transform.
All right, that gets a little complicated. Let me give you an analogy, and you tell me if this is a good analogy.
Go ahead.
It's possible. It certainly is possible, because it was done, to send a signal across the Atlantic Ocean with a spark gap transmitter.
True.
It could be done, but it takes massive amounts of power that is very wasteful.
Which they didn't have in those days. They were transmitting some other form of electromagnetics. You consider the coherer they used at the other end need millivolts of signals. And if you transmit a kilowatt across the Atlantic Ocean, you get maybe 10 microvolts tops. How the hell did that coherer trigger? You tell me.
Well, my point was, you could send a spark signal across the Atlantic. It was done, but it required a very great deal of power. You can do it today.
There wasn't that much power.
Well, compared to the power that you, for example, with a modern a single sideband narrowband transmitter, you could do it today with far less power.
You can do about 10 watts.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So that seems like a good analogy to the beginning of the Philadelphia experiment versus the refinements that occurred at Montauk.
But still, at Montauk, they used tremendous amounts of power. Of course, they were trying to bend the space-time continuum, and it takes tremendous amounts of power. Any quantum physicist will tell you that. It takes something like 5 and 10,000 ampere per meter magnetic field.
Yes, but the original Philadelphia experiment was, as you said, kind of a blunderbuss compared to what could be done today.
Well, the Montauk Project was much more finesse. That's why Montauk Project controlled the vortex. They didn't control it from Philadelphia. They controlled it from Montauk. Philadelphia was just another power source. That's all it was. It was an open-ended power source. They had no finesse. All they did was just generate tons of power, put it out in the ether, and by God, something happened.
What did you actually do? What did you work on?
I started out as a technician, graduated up to an engineer. My responsibility was to modify the old SAGE radar transmitter. I was the fellow that set up the pulse modulation schemes, the synchrodyne modulation schemes, and set up the frequency hopping. I had to work on the coho to synthesize local oscillators that were used in the transmitter.
What did they tell you were working on?
They told me that we were working on equipment to interface human beings to technology, the mind of man to technology, which was very interesting to me.
I should say. But you were actually working on the pulsing of the signal that would carry a transmission, not so much, that is to affect other human beings, right? I
didn't realize this until later on in the project. This is what they were really doing. At that time, I was so involved in it, I couldn't see myself getting out of it easily.
Well, it seems to me that's a very, very dangerous technology. Very dangerous.
It's very dangerous, yes, I agree with you.
That's
why we all decided towards the end of the project to crash it.
Yeah, you did. That's what I was going to ask you.
That's why the monster was created, to crash the project. Because Duncan especially was saying things that the rest of us didn't dare say. Duncan found God, got excised, we don't know what happened, but all of a sudden he calls a meeting and says, hey, this thing is going totally into the lower world and the lower domains. It's getting very evil. Of course, we all knew this, but we didn't have the guts to say it. And we all agreed, yes, yes, yes. What do we do? Well, we got to bring this thing down. How do we do it? Well, let's create this big, hungry, nasty monster that will scare them into crashing it.
Fascinating. And it worked?
Yes, it worked very well. All it did was drive them underground, just shut them down for a while.
I've got a number of questions for you, Preston, faxed in, and then we'll get to the telephones. Art, I would like to ask Preston whether there is a possibility that the occurrences at Amityville, New York, could somehow be related to the Montauk Project. I got this thought while reading his book, Montauk Revisited. That's your book?
Yep. You mean the Amityville horror stuff?
That's right.
I don't know. I was involved as a parapsychology researcher years ago, and we really couldn't tie much of anything to that house. That's the only statement I'll make on it.
You were there?
Mm-hmm.
You were at Amityville.
About 10 miles west of here.
What, very briefly, let's take a sidetrack, because that's fascinating. What did you find at Amityville? I've seen the movie. I don't know how much relationship that has to what really happened.
Well, we checked the heat, we checked the heat differentials, we checked the static charges, we checked the magnetic anomalies. We didn't find anything. We didn't find anything to back up the bugs. We didn't find anything to back up the bleeding walls. I myself feel that this is something that maybe there was a genuine haunting, but the fellow that wrote the book just blew the thing way out of proportion.
All right.
Because we couldn't find anything to back it up. So I was involved in a team of parapsychologists that was called in to investigate it.
All right.
There was even rumors of an Indian burial ground under the house. Who knows what really happened there? I don't know.
All right. Dear Art, I wonder if you would ask your guest if the Super Collider was in any way planned to be used with the project he was working on, Montauk.
No, because the Super Collider came afterwards. Although we have been getting a lot of information lately that they are using particle accelerators as particle beam weapons, of course, a particle beam power source, or a particle beam amplifier. This is where they use particles going to the velocity of light, doing the mass energy conversion based upon E equals mc squared. I will tell the public that the physicists have reached the speed of light with particles, and that they today are using this as a power source or a power amplifier. Imagine a power amplifier that can tap the power of a nuclear bomb, literally, this may be where they got all the power to bend space and time at Montauk. We know there was a particle accelerator, and I believe it's active today because once myself and other people walking over it got a dose of some sort of radiation.
Well, I know this.
Such a radiation sickness for a while.
Preston, I know this, that they have considered using nuclear explosions or controlled explosions in satellites to focus beams. Is that?
Yeah, to focus a laser.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've read the same thing. That's supposedly a Star Wars weapon.
Exactly.
But we really don't need that. All we got to do is accelerate particles to see. They do it by starting out with a large accelerator, dumping into a smaller one yet, and each time you go to a smaller and smaller one, the velocity just goes up. Remember, as you bring the particles closer into the circle, what happens, the momentum makes them go faster and faster. And at some point, you're going to reach C, the speed of light. And magical things happen when you reach the speed of light.
Well, what about surpassing it? Is it possible?
Not in this dimension.
So that, in effect...
100% correct. You cannot surpass the speed of light within our reference frame. If you're going to surpass the speed of light, you got to do it in another reference frame relative to ours. I'm not saying I believe it's possible to go past it, but not in our reality as we know it. You got to warp into another reality to go past the speed of light relative to us here.
All right. Listen, this comes from St. Louis, Missouri. Please ask Mr. Nichols if there's a way that anybody can render himself or herself impervious to mind control by any outside force or protection.
Well, what you have to do is you have to consider the level of consciousness and awareness this thing is operating at, and you just got to raise your level of awareness above that. The mind, if it's aware of what's going on, the mind can automatically protect against this. That's part of why I'm putting this information out, to let people know what's going on, so they got an idea of how to protect themselves on a subconscious level.
You're saying then, in effect, you can protect yourself with your own will.
Right.
All right, I've got it, I think.
This is a message of the New Age, essentially.
So the New Age is mixed in with all of this?
Oh, yes. Very definitely.
All right.
This is the application of New Age metaphysical principles to technology. This is what we're talking of.
Expand on the evil part of your statement, if you would.
Well, I feel the whole mind control aspect of the thing is evil. Man is meant to have a free mind, not to be dominated. Also, they were working in maneuvering and manipulating time so certain people would have power that probably shouldn't have power, or the power group would get more power and they get more oppressive, and, the whole 9 yards of this.
Well,
and
I guess
also,
you remember the old, Preston, you remember the old expression, once they've seen something or another, Paris, how are you going to keep them down on the farm? Once they've experimented with mind control or imagine or know they can control minds, how are you ever going to stop them?
Only way I can see you stopping them is get the population aware enough that it just doesn't work.
Is there any way that a person could know that their mind is being controlled?
I guess if you start doing things out of character, that would be a good sign of it. Also, if you had the monitoring equipment, if you knew what to listen for, if you're educated in radio like you and I are, you could probably pick this up on a radio and notice the very sharp, edgy tones that would appear on your radio. I can tune in and listen and hear the stuff.
We as human beings, our government, whoever, the powers that be, would have great interest in mind control, and if they're not working on it, I think that would be more fantastic than believing that they are working on it. I mean, it's that simple.
Well, I'd like to say at this point that if someone comes and asks me how much of the legend is true, I would tell them the Philadelphia experiment is true, the mind control aspiration, the mind control part of the project is probably 90-odd% correct. I'm just not sure exactly how well the time tunnel worked. That would be my my assessment of how successful they were.
All right, so
I thoroughly believe the mind control worked, and it's thoroughly possible. The only thing is they could not at that time work on mass populations. using the particle beam system that interacts with the brain directly. You don't need a signature anymore.
So,
using the particle beam system.
So you're saying that mass mind control is not necessarily possible?
Today it is.
Today it is.
Today it is because,
oh, great.
See, before you used to go in with a signature to the non-physical mind. Today they're using a particle beam to modulate the particle interchange between the synaptic interchanges in the brain, to either read patterns or to modulate patterns on the brain.
Oh, boy. So you're saying they could be sending out signals that are actually controlling the masses.
Mm-hmm. Synapses.
Wow. Wonderful. I know, Preston, that there's been a lot of research done on the effect of low frequencies on human beings.
Well, what he's saying is it can transmit the effect of a whole room full of people, the eyes ahead of you. All this might be doing is fragmenting your own memories, working directly, physically into the brain. And this could be done with some sort of VLF, ELF type device.
All right. What about the transmissions made by the middle part of our country? Very powerful ELF transmissions to our submarines.
Yeah, I forget what that's called. I know what you're talking of.
I was just wondering if you think that kind of level of low-frequency transmission could affect biological entities that are close to the source.
That appears to be mostly sinusoidal teletype-type modulation.
Right.
It's not direct on and off.
So without the pulsing, you don't think there'd be a lot of effect?
No.
All right.
Remember, the mind itself, the brain will automatically even out a change in level. You got to change the level so fast that the DC restoration in the neurological system doesn't work.
The human brain does generate a signal. It is a very weak signal normally, isn't that?
Well, it's actually a virtual state signal.
It's what? Reduce that so I can understand it.
Well, you know, when you do a complex calculation, the figure phase angle, you get sine, cosine function, real world imaginary function.
Yes.
The human emanations are based upon the imaginary functions, not the real. But you're 100% right. The real world emanations from a human being are very weak, but the imaginary world emanations are very strong. This is why you need typically vacuum potentials to detect this stuff.
What have you seen exactly, and how and where?
At Montauk, they had a little creature that looked all the world like the little grays as described by Whitley Strieber.
Oh?
About 4 foot tall, and they stunk to high heaven.
Stunk?
And then we had a thing that resembled a cross between a lizard and a human being. What it was, I really don't know.
I have heard that description before, too, kind of reptilian.
Yeah. The closest thing, there was an old Star Trek episode where Captain Jerk fought something called a Gorn that sort of looked like what I saw at Montauk. Now, I will say, I don't drink, I don't use drugs, I don't do any of that stuff. I also don't hallucinate. They were.
Have you ever been under the care of a psychiatrist?
Nope.
No? All right, I just had to add that one in there. So in other words,
that's a valid question.
Well, I mean, some of this you've got to admit, Preston, it's wild stuff.
I know it's wild stuff. This is why I doubted my own sanity at times. Myself. I've come to the conclusion that's not me. That I was seeing this crud real. Also, a lot of the other people at Montauk saw the same thing and described exactly the same.
How many other people have corroborated what you're saying, or even substantial parts of what you're saying?
Oh, about 30-odd people.
You know, there are a lot of people listening, or who would fax me or write to me or you, and would say you're crazy as a loon. What would you say to them? How would you defend that? Now, technically, you have a lot of details, and I am impressed by that, but some of it is quite admittedly pretty fantastic stuff.
It's very fantastic stuff. The first thing I would mention is people used to say to me they remembered me from the Montauk base. I didn't remember them until I broke the memory blocks I had. This stuff is highly possible. We have a lot of witnesses. I think we have to look at, can 1,000 Frenchmen be wrong? We had no real-world documentation, evidence, proof. The only proof we have is that they're doing something strange, even to this day. And we were talking of 420 to 460 megahertz broadcast.
That's right.
And we're still finding emanations in the same frequency range to this day. I first got excited thinking I was picking up the signal out of time from the 70s and the 80s, but I came to realize, no, this is generated today. If they're doing something like this today, fitting the specs, sending out a very strong ELF signal that I picked up on coils as pulses without a carrier, and the carrier, if they're still sending out, that means the equipment I'm describing is there to this day producing signal, and it probably was there in the 70s and the 80s, and they probably were playing back then.